Alright, let's talk about my top 10 favourite films. This video was not sponsored. It was inspired by a colleague having nominated me for a Facebook top 10 list. Pretty much the idea was to grab a screenshot from my top 10, I've got the hiccups right now, just an FYI, grab a screenshot from the top 10 favourite films of mine, and for 10 days straight, post one of each image from number 10 to number 1, with no context about what the film is, or my review of it, or anything like that. You pretty much had to guess if you wanted to guess. And his list was interesting, and then he nominated me in his third day of doing it, and I'm like, fuck, I really actually got to put this to thought. What are my top 10 favourite films? And I came up with them. Now, this is of... hiccup. This list is as of the 1st of September? Holy damn, it is the 1st of September 2018. So yeah, it'll be a while after this video's been recorded that it will come out, because I haven't actually done the list on Facebook yet. My plan is to start doing it today. So yeah, I'm going to give you a screenshot from each film, and I'm going to dive into each film. I'm not going to be vague and just be like, oh, guess what the film is. I'm actually going to say what each film is. So here's my number 1 screenshot for number 10. This is a picture of Kurt Russell. He has a scar on his face, and he's happy with some kind of silvery looking jacket coat. These hiccups are really going to bother the crap out of me, I'm sorry. This is Tarantino's 2007 film Death Proof. Of course, I have the Grindhouse double feature as well. So I have both versions of the film, because that's how much I love it. This film, because I love Kurt Russell, I love Tarantino, and I will mention this is the only Tarantino film I have on my list. My second favourite of his being Pulp Fiction. Pretty obvious choice. This is probably one of his least popular films, which I find really interesting. My least favourite of his is Jackie Brown, for pretty obvious reasons. Obvious reasons? I don't know, it's just the least interesting of his films. So in terms of, like, what my list is, in terms of, like, my what makes me categorize what each film is in terms of how it goes on my list, of course you've got the aspect of rewatchability, the quality of the film, the quality of the filmmaking, the actors, the soundtrack, the director, the writer. There is all these different aspects, but it's also mostly a personal thing. Like, what does it personally touch on for me? This film was introduced to me about 2-3 years ago. SBS2 in Australia was doing a Tarantino Fest, if I'm not wrong, like, for like 3 to 4, no, a Kurt Russell Fest. For the 4 weeks of 1 month, they'd show a Kurt Russell film, and so they showed, Death Proof, and so the guy had introduced it saying that this was like the theatrical version that was pretty much the version that they had in the Grindhouse double feature, so the shorter version. And of course, the guy said, like, oh, it doesn't include a lap dance and some other sounds, and I'm like, what the fuck is this film? And from the moment it started, I fell in love with it. I don't even know if I'm really into Grindhouse or anything. I've never really watched those kind of films, but I love car action, and also, of course, Kurt Russell, but not to mention all the female characters in this film. Like, it's such just an odd film, like, from the very first shot being feet, to, like, how it's 2 different halves of a film, like 2 films put into one. I also especially love the female cast in the second half, with Rosario Dawson, in particular, and Zoe Bell even. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is one of my favourite actresses, which also made me quite interested in watching this. Yeah, and this is just I just really like this film. It's just very bizarre, but very nicely done, and just pretty top notch. I don't know if Cooper agrees. Alright, so now we're on to number 9. Where is my Blu-ray for number 9? I have so many goddamn Blu-rays over here. Ah, it's on the bottom of the pile, of course. So, of course, this is the screenshot. It's pretty obvious what the film is, but it's also, for people who've never seen it, like, it's also like, what the fuck is that? It is a screenshot from John Carpenter's 1982 film, The Thing. Now, I'm not going to know the date of every single one of these films. I might have to actually check the back. I'm not, like, so into these films, depends on the film, of course, but some of them I'm not so desperately into that, like, I'm going to be like, I know every little detail about the film, and, like, I don't... Sometimes I just don't give a shit. Sometimes I just really fucking like the film. So in this case, I got the 4K master of The Thing. I love this film, from soundtrack to casting. Again, another Kurt Russell film. It's hard to say which performance I prefer, of MacReady or Stuntman Mike. You got, of course, the original poster. This is Arrow Video's 4K master of it. It is gorgeous. The soundtrack is exceptional. The Thing, all the practical effects, holy Jesus. That screenshot being a good example of just how fucked up this film is. And I only watched this film for the first time last year, in 2017, because I had the old Blu-ray of it from 2010, and I'm like, you know what, I gotta watch this film, and it just... I was always scared shitless of the idea of the film, and I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna watch it, and I just thought, fuck it, why not? And I put on, and I've loved it ever since, and watching the 4K master is even better. It's just an extraordinary film. I don't have much more to mention. Like, I don't really want to delve into, like, oh, all these parts are so great. I really want to touch on the personal stuff and how it reflects at me. I think it's just a perfect example of great body horror, but also great claustrophobia, and it has such a Lovecraft vibe, which I'm very into Lovecraft, especially right now, that it's just extraordinary. Alright, so this is the screenshot for number 8. Yeah, okay. So, it's Clint Eastwood, that's pretty obvious. But what film is it he in? It's probably a Western, that's probably obvious. For those who, obviously know, it's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is my favourite Sergio Leone film, which again, this is also a 3-hour-long Western, 179 minutes. And I just love this film, from the character introductions to the ending. It's all iconic, it's all interesting. There's never a dull moment, even though it's a 3-hour-long film, which sometimes, 3-hour-long films can have a dull moment, but this one's just always great. And I just love how the cheesiness of, like, how some of them are just obviously Italian people trying to pretend to be Americans. It's hilarious. Yeah, I don't really... In terms of when I first watched it, I think I grew up on this film pretty much, but, like, I always remember the iconic parts. It's a 3-hour-long film. When I was a kid, I couldn't be bothered watching so much of it, so I always remember the iconic parts, especially the ending, and really especially the start. The start and the end just always got me. And the theme even. But yeah, no, I really just love this film as both a Western and as just a 3-hour epic. Alright, number 7. Oh, it's a pretty obvious film, famous image from this famous film. This is David Lynch's 1977 film, Eraserhead. Of course, if you've seen my favorite Blu-ray collection video, you'll probably recognize maybe all of these films, almost all of these films. I love David Lynch. He's my favorite director. And this is my favorite film of his, Eraserhead. What does that mean? That there are no other David Lynch films on this list? Yes, there are no other David Lynch films on this list. I'm not going to go into how awesome this just set is for the Criterion Collection, which of course is also Region A for those who live in Australia, or in Europe. It has a massive ass booklet. It's a very, obviously, surreal film. It's very inspirational to me. It's very bizarre, very beautiful, and just is such a good use of everything that's given to it. And of course, this was a film that took 5 years to make, and it still resonates with me. At least I think I watched it for the first time about 2 years ago. Actually, maybe last year for the first time. Yeah. Yeah, no, I did it for my David Lynch essay, and I was my video essay, and I was just really, interested to see what it was all about, because I've watched parts of Twin Peaks. Of course, I've since then watched all of Twin Peaks so fucking much, and it doesn't have, it has quite a low rewatchability level for me, because it's one of those films that you're not gonna be like, oh, I want a film in the background, and you go to, Eraserhead. It's not gonna be that kind of film. It's the kind of film you sit down, you pay attention to it, and you enjoy it for what the hell it is. And I've seen it in theatre. I've seen like a free 60p bootleg version that my uni provided to me. Actually, it may have been my teacher from my high school. I can't remember. And of course, the best version I could get of it, which is the Criterion Collection version. Alright, now we're on to number 6. Okay, this is a pretty obvious shot, I think. It is, of course, Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. I have the 4K master of it because I love this film. I love it from the soundtrack to the cast to the writing. Everything about this film I absolutely adore. And whenever, like, you put it on, I'm just going to sit down. Okay, what point in the movie it's on, I'm going to sit down and watch it. I think it has incredible rewatchability as well. And I love the themes and everything put into it. It's my favourite Nolan film. And I have all of his films except for his earliest ones because they're like almost impossible to get in Australia and I do not care. I even have Memento on Blu-ray, which is not the 10th anniversary. I'm disappointed about that, but it's still a version and I'm happy to have it. He's obviously not my favourite director, but yeah, this film is just beautiful. I remember this was like my 2001, like watching it in theatres. And yes, I will mention that Kubrick is not in my top 10 list. He's in my top 20 list, I guess. There are like 2 films of his that I absolutely adore, and the other ones I just really like. He almost made it into the list, I'll put it that way. But yeah, I remember watching this in theatre, and it just blew me away, every little aspect of it. And of course I didn't get to watch it in IMAX or in anything that was really intended to except for a theatre. And so since then, of course, I bought the Blu-ray, and I bought the 4K, and it's gorgeous. I don't even mind the changing aspect ratios in the edits, with the bigger IMAX shots to the smaller shots. My family still gets confused as to, is that the 4K shots where it's bigger, or is it 4K when it's smaller? I'm like, the whole thing's 4K, it's just the resolution. Number 5. This is probably the most unobvious film, I would say, on my list. Like, I think every film here, everyone knows about to some degree, but this one, not so many. This is Swiss Army Man from 2016, if I'm not wrong, maybe 2015. It does not say, because it is a bitch. Yeah, it's a very bizarre film about a guy. Sorry, battery died. Where was it? Daniel Radcliffe's The Corpse. Yeah, Swiss Army Man. Yeah, I watched this when it came out in cinema because I had heard that it was quite an interesting film with an interesting soundtrack, and I love the soundtrack. I love the casting, small cast, and great production design. It's just a funny, bizarre film, which really got me into funny, bizarre films, or at least just bizarre films. Shut up, Indigo. Jesus, knocking through the door, God. This is one of those films where I find it interesting that everyone in my family really like it. And, like, I have of this list, most of them are pretty enjoyed by my family. Like, my family have enough in terms of diverse views to make it interesting to show them particular films. I'm not obviously criticising the taste in films. I just find it, out of all the films, I would have thought that this would be one that they're just like, that's just stupid, it doesn't work, or whatever like that. But no, they liked it, they enjoy whenever I put it on, which hasn't been too much lately, but I swear if I put it on again, I don't say they'd flock to it, but, yeah, no, this is just a proud film of mine. This was a favourite film of mine for the whole year after I saw it, until, of course, I discovered David Lynch. Even though I do prefer this over Eraserhead only because of rewatchability. Only because of that. But it does tackle themes and issues that I find quite interesting, It practically being a fantasy film. Realistic fantasy? I don't know. Alright, this is number 4. We're in the top 4 now. Yeah, okay, obvious film. It's Shaun of the Dead. My favourite Edgar Wright film. Favourite film with Simon Pegg or Nick Frost. Or Edgar Wright as a zombie tripping over in the background. This is one of those films where I know a lot of the facts to it, just because I remember the first time Dad showed me this film, because he was, I probably have even told the story before, it was literally, he was like, oh, I've taped this cool, funny zombie film last night, come take a look, and he was showing me, Sam, and Noah. This is when we were, this is maybe a year or two after the film, this came out 2004, it was maybe 2008 even, it's hard to say. It was, by this stage, Hot Fuzz had come out, I think the year beforehand or something. And so they were showing this film on probably SBS, and I was like, oh, zombie film, no. But then just from the start, I was just like, hey, this is pretty cool. And since then, I got the limited edition slipcase of Hot Fuzz for my birthday, like the year after, and I've loved watching all of them. Even The World's End, I really like that one as well. I love all of Edgar Wright's films, especially. But this one just always tops the cake for just in terms of how much I enjoy rewatching it. Even though my second favourite of his is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which is an interesting choice for a second, if, I feel like it's because I really like the comics, and I just really like how they adapted that. Obviously not to the point of faithfulness, but to the point of just enjoyability. Yeah. Alright, what are we on to number 3 now? Okay, so I had 2 shots to go with. It was either this one or the one where just behind her is the Alien, because this is, of course, Alien. This is the 4-film box set. My hiccups are gone. This is, yes, a 4-film box set. I love Alien. I was even talking with my film teacher about it the other day, and she was even... She and I both agreed this is a perfect film. Everything about this film scared the crap out of me as a kid. It still kind of does, but not really. Mostly anything with the facehugger just doesn't appeal to me. I've watched every single Alien film. Alien is still the best, in my opinion. It's a very beautiful film. It's slow, it's clever, it's just immersive. From production design to sound effects, soundtrack, the Xenomorph itself, everything about it is just a perfect film. It's just such a fun... It's just like a small slasher film with people trapped in a room getting killed off by an alien. But then it has such just a bigger whole thing to it that's... When you really... when you cut it down to that level of a film, it's just like, oh, it's an alien... it's pretty much just a slasher film. It's an alien killing people inside of a house. And it's like, oh, cool. Or like a giant lizard thing, But no, I've been watching this film since I was a kid. I have no idea why the hell my dad introduced me to this film. He bought the first film because, of course, when he first watched it, he's told me the story of it when he first watched it so many times, and he didn't know anything about it because, again, the advertising was so vague. So he went into watching this film called Alien, and surprised he loved it. I don't know how scared he was of the film. I cannot really remember if he's ever verbally stated if he was ever scared of it or not. But he appreciated what it was to so much of a level, just from how elegant the film is. And I agree, it is a beautiful, elegant film. It is a masterwork in filmmaking, and I will rewatch this film whenever. But yeah, it scared the crap out of me as a kid. It consistently, and yet I still watch the sequels, and I still watch the prequels, and the spin-offs, and I even played some of the video games, or watched people play the video games, especially Alien Isolation. But yeah, this film has... I think if any kind of film introduced me to a fandom, or got into that kind of idea of what a fandom or that kind of pop culture is, it's Alien. That got me into all this kind of stuff. I don't know what he agrees about. Yeah, so that was my number 3. It's weird, a film that scared the crap out of me so much over all my life, and only about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I rewatched it again and was like, this is just such a great film, and I hate that I was so scared of it. I love that I was so scared of it, but I hate it as well. Number 2, oh boy. I was looking for a different shot when I was going to post these on Facebook, but I'm like, you know what, this is actually probably my favourite scene in the whole film. This is Sam Raimi's 1987, Jesus Christ, Evil Dead 2. I love the Evil Dead franchise. I find it interesting that people prefer Evil Dead 1 over Evil Dead 2, but again, it's probably because, for the obvious thing of, like, it's pure horror compared to horror comedy, and this is goofy horror comedy, but this is perfect Sam Raimi in my opinion. And even though there is so many cheesy aspects to it, and so much of it's obviously B-grade film, and there's, like, you can see the hand of the camera, there's all these technical errors, and I still love it, because they make the film such a film. Like, this, out of all films, is probably the one that's really gotten me into, I guess, making films, because this was when I watched this for the first time, I believe, in 2016, no, sorry, strange quote from Star Wars. I believe it was 2015. It was year 11. You know, last year was 2017, then yeah, it was probably 2015, 2016 era. It was my first year of doing media studies, and my friend had suggested watching this film. He was just like, go straight into the second one and then watch the third one. They're great. And I was like, yeah, but I gotta watch the first one. So I bought the first one with the second one, watched the first one with Sam. He did not like it, not because it was, like, scary or anything, he just thought it was crap. He's not really into small budget horror films in terms of, like, cheesy small. Like, not as in, like, something that's, like, small budget but expertly crafted as a small budget. But yeah, so he walked out of the room, I put on Evil Dead 2, and I've loved Evil Dead 2 ever since. I love Bruce Campbell, I love Sam Raimi, I love every little piece of everything in this film. And this, I think that this was my favourite film pretty much from the moment I watched it. Then of course Swiss Army Man came along, and that topped it. But then it was always an argument, which one's better? And then we get to number 1. Oh, of course, it's fucking Blade Runner 2049, if that wasn't obvious. This film is just perfection in a bottle. Like, I think the only reason I'd say this is a less of a perfect movie, is because it's a sequel. It's the only reason. I think it's much better than Blade Runner, the first one. I absolutely adore this film, and every little tiny detail about it. It is just beautiful. It is beautiful in design. It is just, it is a perfect fucking film. And another one that if you put it on, I will sit through it. No, even if it's the last 5 minutes of the film, like that final action scene onwards, I would watch any part of this film from the start to the end, wherever the hell you were watching it in. As in, like, whenever you'd started and I walked in on you watching it. If that doesn't sound weird. Yeah, and it's just amazing. The first time I watched it was, of course, when I was in theaters. I went to just an ordinary screening, and I got the back row. That's how... It was actually a pretty crowded theater. I got the back row of the theater with my family, and I didn't dislike it. I found it interesting because we were getting the background more than we're getting the actual foreground dialogue and stuff like that. So especially all the echoey scenes, I could not hear what the hell anyone was saying. So there was a lot of the film that I was not understanding. But I was just getting immersed in the world from, like, the background audio and the music and the soundtrack and just all the people talking behind you and stuff, and it was just interesting for that matter. And I'm just like, what the hell is this? And of course, then you have beautiful cinematography from Roger Deakins. You got expert directing from Villeneuve. I love Ryan Gosling, and Harrison Ford is amazing as well. And even the woman who plays Joy in this film, I have no idea who the hell she is. I think it's Ana de Armas. And I think Sylvia Hoeks, fuck pronunciation these days, who pretty much plays the villain, because what's his name? The Jared Leto's isn't much of, like, an on-screen presence, but he's like a behind-the-scenes kind of presence, which again I really like. But no, just every character in this film is great, and I love just how slowly it builds into everything, and it's just so worth it. So the second time I watched it was in theatre again at the Astor Theatre. They were showing it in 4K, and I watched it with Guy, and I was just like, what the fuck, how is this film so good? Yeah, so I obviously definitely love the crap out of this film. I have the heart and soul, or whatever the book is called, of Blade Runner 2049, which is this whole production book of it. I don't know if I'll ever purchase like the screenplay or anything, but it is definitely a film that I love, both from concept designs to the final product. I love the prequel films that are set between Blade Runner and 2049. I even love Blade Runner, which I have the final cut on 4K. And I want to get all versions of the original Blade Runner. I don't know why, I just do. I've seen the director's cut, and I've seen the final cut, and there's so much of, I don't really know what the difference is outside of the scene with a fucking unicorn, which is taken from a different film, and then put into it, because Ridley Scott is crazy. But yeah, no, it's just, yeah. So yeah, those are my top 10 favourite films of all time as of September in 2018. There are a lot of films that I obviously adore and obviously love the crap out of. I think with all these films, I find there to be absolutely nothing wrong with them. Like, there is no uninteresting point of any of these films. There is no point where I just be like, nah, I'm done, I'm gonna, like, leave and then come back later. You know, there is no point in any of these films, of which I would just stop watching it. And that's what made it the most interesting to do this list, because I'm thinking of all these films, I'm like, well, this one has great cast, this one has great soundtrack, but I'm like, yeah, but would I sit through the whole entire thing, or, like, if it was, like, this far through, would I sit through it and stuff like that? Like, even Alien, I'd come in even after the first facehugger attack. Like, there are so many elements of different films that I wouldn't mind, as long as I got to rewatch the film in some capacity, you know? Yeah, so if this has been quite an interesting video, then if this has been an interesting video from your point of view, then cool. If it hasn't been, then to make it more interesting, there's a dial on the back of this. Oh, look! It's Dale Cooper! Ha! Ha! Buddy or boy or... Ha! Don't fall over, please. I paid $50 for you. Yeah, so... Yes, he's a cardboard cutout. Along with the rest of my posters, he looks completely indistinguishable, doesn't he? You totally wouldn't notice him or get scared shitless every morning at 6 AM. Yeah, if you guys have suggestions for films, fucking throw it in the comments. Give me your top 10 list. You don't have to be as barraged as I have. Barraged? That word just came to mind. I don't even know if it's a word. You don't have to be so specific about, like, all the different things that make your top 10 list your top 10 list, but if you have a top 10 list, I'd be happy to hear, because I love mostly getting film recommendations. It's a big hobby of mine to get film recommendations from people, especially friends. But I will listen to you because you watch my video. Cool. So yeah, if you like this video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. You can, of course, watch other videos in terms of my Blu-ray collection from last year, or my favourite films that I own on Blu-ray or DVD, or the box sets, the VHS I think I've yet to film maybe. I don't know if I filmed that last time. I'm going to film that now then, if I haven't. Bye!